Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Judy Keene. I am Director of Public Affairs for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. I would like to introduce this morning Bishop Christopher Coyne from the Diocese of Burlington, Vermont. Bishop Coyne is also the chairman of the Committee on Communications for the USCCB, and he will be introducing our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Following the half-an-hour press conference, if it goes that long, myself, as well as Bishop Michael Burbidge, the incoming chair of communications, and Bishop Doherty, for a little while, he wants to get some lunch, will be available for follow-up questions individually. Just a reminder, if you have a request to meet with a specific bishop from your area, please go through Judy and Jane's office, and they'll handle the request for you. To my immediate left is Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, Archbishop of Galveston, Houston. He is president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And further down on the table is Bishop Timothy Doherty, Diocese of Lafayette in Indiana, who is the chairman of the Committee for the Protection of Children and Young People. Certainly, this morning's announcement has thrown many of us a little bit sideways because it was completely unexpected. With the body of bishops in the room at 9 o'clock, that was the first time we had heard about this. I think Cardinal DiNardo handled it very eloquently and well when he explained to us what the reasons for it. In a positive way, this does not mean that we suspend the agenda completely. We can continue to move forward on the very positive and good things that we're doing as a conference. It just basically means that we might not come to a place of action item at the end. But I'll let the Cardinal speak to that too when you ask him specific questions, and I'd like to just turn it back to Judy.
Great, thank you so much, Bishop. If you would kindly raise your hand if you have a question, I will call upon you, and then if you can state your name, the news organization you are with, and to whom you are addressing your question, it would be appreciated. We also have 2 handheld mics, so if you would kindly wait till you receive the mic so we can then hear your question, it would be appreciated. And we'll go ahead and begin with the first question right here with the gentleman, the navy tie.
Pardon?
Yes, if you could just wait for the mic, thanks.
Apologies. Cardinal, to the folks in the parishes around the country who are eager to see words turn into deeds, what do you say to these folks who are disappointed that even these small steps are going to be denied them for another several months?
My first comment to them would be, we have accepted with disappointment this particular event that took place this morning. We have not lessened in any of our resolve for actions. We are going to work intensely on these items of action. We can't vote on totally, but clarify them, get them even more intensely, let's say, canonically well, so that Rome will see that. And we'll tell our people we're just going to keep pushing and moving until we get to a point where it becomes action. We are not ourselves happy about this. We are working very hard to move to action, and we'll do it. We just have a bump in the road.
Should they retain faith that you?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Should they retain their faith that the American Church is going to do something about this problem?
Absolutely. We're dedicated to it. We absolutely want it. The bishops that I've spoken to are of one mind, depending on any of their points of view. They're all on one mind of this. So, to my mind, we're set to go. Ours is a bump in the road, not in any fashion a lack of intensity to get this moving.
Okay, next question, Nikki, front row.
Nikki Batiste, CBS News. Cardinal DiNardo, you have called this child sexual abuse crisis a violation of trust. How can Catholics trust their leaders again?
They watch us in action in bearing fruit. And one of the ways you bear fruit is you say it is the problem. You mention any of our participation and having kept it going. You also do look to what's happened to this issue over the past 17 or 18 years. Remember, the Dallas Charter is not completed yet because the bishops weren't always involved in the Dallas Charter, but it did do good things. Ours is to say whatever good has been done will continue with these actions reaching their completion. It just takes time. I think the people in the church have a right to be skeptical. I think they also have a right to be hopeful.
On that note, how does the Pope's no vote announcement complicate what you're trying to do here?
You mean about the announcement today? Right. Well, it's a little more complicated. It's a bump in the road because we were all set to move to reach an action stage here this week, at least in principle. Though, as you know, on these action items, always carried with them. Well, then you got to start doing them. But this puts a bump in the road. It does not, in any fashion, lessen at least my resolve. I mean, to my mind, all I'm thinking of, okay, well, this will take a month here or something to do. But I don't look upon any of this as a change in direction for the Catholic bishops of the United States. That we are a universal church. The issues raised by sex abuse, as was even mentioned by Cardinal Subich today, is universal. And the church has to handle it universally. Perhaps on that level, as they prepare for the February meeting, there are some slowdowns in terms of action. But there's no slowdown in the United States. I mean, we're dedicated to this since 2002, and we're going to move on.
Great. Okay, we're going to move on to some other questions here. JD.
JD Flynn, Catholic News Agency. Eminence, what dicasteries were consulted about these action items before? What was their initial reaction when you consulted with them? And then what dicasteries were involved in saying no?
You mean about what's happened today?
Yeah, so the plan for delay.
The dicastery that was involved with the announcement was the Congregation for Bishops.
This morning's announcement, it was the Congregation for Bishops who said no.
Now, when we were in Rome before, we consult as we normally do when the presidency of the Congress every October meets. We consult with all of them. I mean, we do. That's the one that's involved in they were the one that sent the letter.
Okay, great. Sorry, can't remember your name.
Susie Pinto.
Go ahead.
Susie Pinto, EWTN News Nightly. Can you hear me? So now that the Holy See has asked you to delay action until the Vatican summit in 2019, what will be your contribution to that meeting, and what will be your message to Pope Francis?
Do you want to do that, Bishop Lafferty?
If you'd let me have a shot at that. The question kind of misses the point. I mean, the train has left the station. There's an intense amount of activity since June in the church and in individual dioceses to address this issue. So to present it as if something has stopped is simply not true. Also, the context of the questions is all top-down. Cardinal DiNardo is not the governor of the Catholic Church in the United States. He is the president of our association. And each diocese remains responsible for its particular work. So there really is the Catholic Church in the United States. There isn't such a thing as a United States Catholic Church. So what that kind of question misses is the intense involvement we have and engagement with our people at the local levels and with our survivor victims and with the agencies that are trying to help us not only prevent victimization, but to help the people who have been victimized in the past. So rather than have all the questions be based from a top-down perspective, I think it would be great if all the bishops here are trying to work from the bottom up toward helping this association come to some solutions. Right, and so that's where the focus is.
Right, and I think I think your question is a good one too, because we can bring a lot in terms of what we've managed to accomplish over 16 years, in terms of cleaning up our act, making sure our churches are safe for children, our schools are safe for children. We're one of the safest organizations for children in the United States. But as Cardinal DiNardo says, we still need to address the bishops' behaviors themselves, which are not part of the charter as it is right now.
Right,
and we can bring that in February. That's a lot that we can bring.
That's why the charter is being, as it were, updated in this particular group of action items we have wanted to do and we will continue to do.
Great. Okay, Ann, right here in the front.
Cardinal DiNardo, I'm Ann Thompson. I'm from NBC News. Did Pope Francis request this delay?
I don't know.
So you didn't get it directly from the Pope?
I got it from the Congregation for Bishops.
From the Congregation for Bishops.
They're the ones that work most with bishops in the world, and the letter came through them. I would say this, when I met with the Holy Father in October, the Holy Father was very positive in a general way. He hadn't seen everything yet, of the kind of action items we were looking to do. That's one thing I can say.
So what do you say to people whose pain can't wait until February?
What I can say is we sense a certain amount of pain ourselves. We are working with you on your behalf, working at local and national levels of our church. We will not stop working and to a certain extent pushing.
Ian. Please wait for the mic. Thanks.
Ian Levitt with the Wall Street Journal. Cardinal DiNardo, it seems like there's been a decent amount of discord between the U.S. bishops and the Vatican on this. There was the request for the visitation on Cardinal McCarrick that wasn't granted. Then Pope Francis asked you to cancel this and just have a retreat instead, and you all said no, and now he's told you today that you couldn't go ahead on the action items. I'm wondering if you could speak to what seems from the outside like that discord.
When this thing first struck, as you recall, I was the one that offered as a possibility an apostolic visitation. When we met first in Rome about that, Rome thought that wasn't the best route to take. They did grant us an ability to start working on action items, which we're dealing with now. They did have the four dioceses do a study themselves of the four major places where Archbishop McCarrick lived and where he ministered. The Holy See has also, some people have said, for instance, during the recent synod, did not place maybe as intensely front and center the question of abuse, though all of us in the United States in the English-speaking world put it as front and center. I'm wondering if some of this isn't also just sometimes some cultural heritage that needs to be constantly addressed. The one thing I can tell you is that when you speak to the Pope about this, he says that it is constantly in his mind, and his letter in October was very clear on that. So there may be that there's, within the Holy See itself, perhaps some tension, who knows. I know where we are, and I know we are very clear what we want to do, and we're very respectful. We're incredibly respectful of the Holy See.
And when you say that we ourselves are not happy about what's happened today, can you be specific about what you're not?
That we're not?
When you said earlier that we ourselves are not happy, and I think we ourselves are not happy about the announcement today, can you be more specific about what you are what
Well,
you are
I
not
thought
happy
we
about?
were disappointed because we were moving along on this. And so I think the natural affection here is to be disappointed when you're on the move. But though we are disappointed, we're still moving, and we'll continue to move. I think the words of whether it's Cardinal Supich today or tomorrow when we start the agenda and start moving through these documents, you're going to see a genuine focus. Focus isn't the same thing always as a carrying on in a rant. Focus is, okay, we have a little stumbling block here. Let's move ahead, do this, this, and this, and we'll keep moving. And I think all the bishops are very, very much together on that one.
Okay, Dennis, front row here on the left.
Hi, Dennis. Hello, Dennis Sadowski, Catholic News Service. I'm wondering if you're going to be expecting, when you all return home later this week, what kind of reception you're going to get back home. That's, people in the pews are probably going to be pretty upset, I would imagine. So are you prepared for that?
Some of them will be upset, and we'll speak directly to that issue. Some of them will see what we've been doing, and they'll say, okay, I had someone just say to me today, I'm with you on it. Just maybe it's going to take time. They're not happy. No, I'm sure there's some who will be quite angry. We learn to deal with this. It's what being a local shepherd of your church is. And you both, you always want to keep giving people a sense of hope. What I mentioned today in my little talk, we need a living sense of hope right now. And I think the church can grant it even through the shepherds, but obviously through our good and wonderful people who I think are moving along with us.
In my conversation with the media over the past few weeks and in my diocese, I've been trying to level expectations down to what is a reasonable point. There's a huge amount of things that need to be accomplished in our agenda within 2 days, And frankly, I thought for the most part, what we would end up coming out with was pretty much where we're going to be tomorrow anyways, on Wednesday anyways, which is working forward, doing the right things for the right reasons, pushing forward, and still seeing these as works in progress. So I think that's a positive way of looking at it.
Work in progress is a nice expression. Work in progress.
So we're going to go over here to the right.
This is for Cardinal DiNardo. From the Associated Press, my name is Dave McFadden. So just curious, precisely when did you brief the Holy See on the details of what you intended to be voting for during this session?
Well, we had a first meeting with some members of the Holy See in September. We had another briefing during the Synod because it is October when we normally visit what they call the dicasteries of the Roman Curia. So we had meetings with them, and during those times, shared with them, if not always in the most explicit way, what it was that we wanted to do. And so that would have been the time frame. But remember, the documents themselves, some of you may not get this, we deal with committees and all. We also first started to deal with this problem in July, when the thing really became very strong with Archbishop McCarrick and then the Pennsylvania report in August. So we had a very small time frame to do a lot of work. The final documents weren't ready until October 30th, I think. So what we have was, in a short amount of space, a lot of documentation going on and recommendations and whatnot in the documents. So it's not surprising on one level to me that people would be catching their breath, perhaps even in Rome. So from that point of view, I understand some of the issues. But as I say, I'm disappointed because I think we were very careful to share, at least in the principles, that what it was we were up to doing and what we wanted to do, because we thought the key was what the charter said was to deal with priests. And we didn't deal with bishops then. The key in these documents are to deal with bishops and to make sure that they are accountable and become accountable and live accountably in their life towards their diocese, their priests, people. Go ahead, Tim. Sure.
Okay, great.
I'd like to address part of the process here, because we're looking out at the end point and say, are people going to be frustrated that they don't have an answer? What we're going to be doing in the next couple of days is raising questions, and especially in the public forum, people will hear, and you as reporters know, that having the right question can mean everything. And what will happen by the public review of our discussions will be, we could assure our people in our parishes that we're asking the right questions. I think part of the frustration is the right people aren't asking the questions, or the right questions aren't being asked. And a lot of these are going to be aired in the next couple of days, and that can be a self-correcting kind of a process. So I think paying attention to the questions will tell us as much about our process as whatever resolutions may eventually evolve.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Kate Amara. I'm from WBAL TV here in Baltimore. And forgive me for being blunt and not understanding how your conference works, but whoever asked you to delay the vote, why not just do it anyway and lead and take action? All three of you have talked about taking action. Why can't you vote on these action issues?
Well, we are Roman Catholic bishops. Each of us have a diocese. We also are gathered together as a conference. Even as a conference, we are Roman Catholic bishops in communion with our Holy Father in Rome, and he has people around him who are in what we call congregations or offices, and we're responsible to them in that communion of faith to be attentive. They're supposed to be attentive to us and our concerns, and we to be attentive to them. Given that attentiveness, which is what we call a church of faith, not just a bureaucracy, when we receive this kind of a letter or a missive, we respond with great care and with great attentiveness. Now, does this mean that we, in the process of obeying here, listening, that we won't also still put forward, but we still think this needs to be done and soon, and yes, we will do that.
That doesn't really make sense to me as a I'm not in your conference, I don't understand. I don't know, perhaps Bishop Coyne, you could, I mean, our viewers are going to see the story and say, why did they have to do what what the letter said? Why not just take it upon yourselves to do it as a conference of American bishops?
By our very nature, are collegial. This is what we see over and over and over again in the documents on who we are. It's the way we understand ourselves. We work in union with each other to come to a collegial place for the pastoral good of the church. We don't work as separate entities onto ourselves. Even in the conferences, there's a unity there. So when the Holy See, acting on behalf of the Holy Father, says, this is what I'd like you to do to bring it to collegiality in February, that's what we do. We don't, it's not just a matter of what we can do, because we could choose to go in our own direction, but that would be counter to who we are as a church, as a collegial church, always seeking to come to a kind of unity of faith. I don't know, Bishop Doherty has anything to say to that?
We're not just a religious NGO. That's not who we are. We're church. And as such, we're in communion with one another in faith. And as leaders, we are responsible and respectful of the leadership in other places, and obviously our great, great respect for the Church of Rome, because that's the first church. So maybe, I don't know if that'll help you at all.
Okay. Lauren?
Hi, Lauren Green from Fox News Channel. I have actually a couple of questions. For first question, I've noticed the 2 abuse survivors who spoke to the bishops today did not see any reaction from the bishops, and I'm wondering if you could tell us how they reacted to those heartfelt stories, particularly the man who said abusing a child is about as close as you can get to murdering somebody and them still breathing. That's pretty graphic about the kind of pain they're going through. How did the bishops react to that?
I can't speak for all the other bishops. I can speak for myself. We deal here with someone who is emotionally both graphic and coherent and powerful. And when you hear someone speak like that, it hits you very hard. It reminds me, of course, he was speaking to a whole group, reminds me of another survivor who I spoke to one-on-one some years ago, whose picture and portrait of himself at the time of his abuse is equally graphic, clear, and moving. So I can only give my own response here, ma'am, and it was very powerful.
The other question I have, though, is does the USCCB run into jurisdictional issues and conflict with the Justice Department, with the Attorneys General of several states, if they don't show that they're taking action on themselves? I mean, the Vatican doesn't have jurisdiction over the U.S. Justice Department, but the DOJ does have jurisdiction.
Sure.
Over you.
Well, you should follow everything that you are asked to do if you're asked for material or if you're being investigated by someone in the government.
The conference does not have jurisdiction over us as individuals either. We're a gathering of people because we're bishops, but the conference has no authority over individual bishops. So it's up to each individual bishop to respond collectively to inquiries from justice people. Can I also just say one thing about the response to the victim? The one thing that survivors say over and over again was, no one listened to us when we came forward with the story. No one listened to us. And I think most of us have learned that the most important thing is to be open and receptive and just listen, and not necessarily respond, but to just listen. And I think that that's what happened this morning more than anything else, is we listened and our hearts were broken to hear what was said. But that's the most important thing, that we believe you, we're listening to you, and we're acting to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen again.
This one. Gentleman here with the mothers. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Joshua McAvoy with the National Catholic Reporter. I wanted to ask Your Eminence Cardinal DiNardo, I'm curious about the involvement of the National Lay Review Board. I'm wondering, with regard to the 2 action items that you were going to vote on, how they were involved or consulted in those items?
They were consulted in the going on of setting up the action item. Very much involved.
Okay, we've got time for just a few more questions. I think we'll go with, sorry, I can't remember your first name. Okay, thank you, Reuters.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Cardinal,
We can't hear you.
Were you given a specific reason for the delay in the vote? And do you have any inkling if there was something specific in the documents that you submitted that they took issue with?
I have to admit, ma'am, I don't know if I understand the point of your question.
Well, I'm saying, when you were told that you would delay the vote, were you given a specific reason for the delay?
One of the things that they did give, and I mentioned this morning, was this meeting in February, and that they want people to be on, our language to be on the same page or learning from each other as we get ready for this meeting. Each of us carry certain amounts of things that are our own and that can be helpful. That was one reason. A second reason was there were some points in one or two of the documents where the canon law needed further precision. Now, those are the things that I got in the letter yesterday.
And do you think those are items that can be worked out so that you can have the vote soon after February?
Well, I certainly think and hope so. We're certainly going to work very hard on that. I can say that much. Whatever is that is a block, we'll try to work out ourselves, as a conference. But when we go to the big meeting in Rome in February, I hope that, my hope is that there's a kind of breakthrough for the whole church. Let me phrase it this way. In 2002, when we did the charter for the protection of young people, that was the first time something like this had happened. When we went to Rome, I was a very young bishop, but I recall that when they went to Rome for this, there was some, I don't know what the word is, opposition, reticence. You had to work with them over and over again to finally get what our charter and rules are. And nowadays, that's universal throughout the church, throughout the world, some of those rules. So in other words, what I find within our Catholic faith, sometimes it takes maybe a little longer than we would even like, but the net effect, because we are a universal church, is you can get things done that are really fine. And I'm hoping myself that what we are doing now, whatever may be some of the bumps in the road, that this will eventually work out. And I don't think that's Pollyannish. I think that there's some trust in that we can do.
Okay, we've got time for one more question.
Give it to Bishop Doherty.
Ed Condon from the Catholic News Agency. Your Eminence, you mentioned earlier the Synod of Bishops that met in Rome last month. One of the things that came out of that meeting was a renewed emphasis on the concept of synodality and less on Rome as the sort of supreme executive in every situation. Do you see this decision by Rome to effectively block the conference from voting on these measures as a rowback on that position of synodality?
I find it, and I'm going to be as frank as I can, I find it a quiz. It's quizzical why it would happen. Now, I think, to give respect to Rome, because, sometimes in these things you have the good guys and the bad guys, and you have, I suspect they thought we may not be dealing synodically enough by moving ahead in our statements, even though we might present them to Rome, without necessarily being attentive to maybe some other areas where they are also dealing with this. I'm just simply wondering if they could turn the synodality back on us as well. My first reaction would have been, this didn't seem to be so synodical. But I think, well, if you look at it that way, maybe somebody else thought, the Americans weren't acting very synodically either. It's a trying thing, but it was quizzical to me when I saw it. Bishop Doherty, do you have something for the end?
I wasn't at the synod, so.
Oh. You didn't sit there for 30 days in Rome.
It was interesting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Your Eminence and Your Excellencies. This will conclude our press conference for today. Please know that we will be having a press conference tomorrow at 5:30, as well as Wednesday at 5:30 as well, too. We hope to see you there, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. Thank you all. Thank you. Well.